So let's go back to locations. Let's look at locations for a minute. When we're thinking about those locations, again, it's something interesting that you have access to. And I want to reference my feature film, Smells Like Community Spirit. That's the feature film that I created for $2,000. And I used the same technique. And this is when I started to apply this theory that I'm teaching to you, this framework and formula. And when I was thinking about the subject matter and the locations and what do I have access to, it's not like the most unique location ever, but I was starting to think about, miniature golf is really fun. I wanted to tell a story of a kind of a throwback to the 80s, kind of screwball, goofy comedy. And I thought, miniature golf is kind of silly. It's kind of goofy. It's fun. And that might not be too hard to get access to. And I started contacting people in my network and just saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing something crazy. I'm going to make a feature film and I'm thinking about basing it around miniature golf. And so people started telling me different leads that they had, or maybe a miniature golf course that was no longer open that maybe I could use to shoot at for little to no money. And it ended up that a buddy of mine used to work at this summer camp, not too far from my house. And the summer camp had a miniature golf course, but it turns out it also had not only the miniature golf course, but like summer camp with like bunks and a fire pit and a wooded area for a forest, but then also it had a diner and a bowling alley that were part of the property there. So this is great. You have one physical address that has all these different looks and these interesting locations that are more interesting than, like I said, just like an average middle class Midwestern home that you're going to shoot at. So I ended up contacting the director of the camp, and he was actually really, really generous and offered to let us shoot at the camp for no money. He really liked my friend who used to be a camp counselor there when he was a teenager, and we agreed that we would shoot our principal photography at the camp the week or two before their actual summer camp started. So we had this narrow window that we could hit in and actually have that space for free. So we weren't out any money for the location, and that came through my network. So then I had to start reverse engineering the story because I thought it was going to focus mainly at the miniature golf course, but I realized the miniature golf course was nice and it was interesting, but it wasn't quite physically interesting enough to hold up for the entire movie. So I went back and thought, we have free reign at a bowling alley. How unique is that? So I started writing most of the scenes to take place at the bowling alley, and then some secondary scenes to take place at the diner and at the miniature golf course, and a little bit around the wooded area at the camp and the fire pit. And then knowing that there would be a handful of scenes that would feature folks, in their home. And I know I could leverage, my house, the home of a couple of their friends, and utilize that. And actually with my house, we were able to get multiple looks where we could use my kitchen to represent one person's home, and my living room to represent another person's home, and my bedroom to represent another person's home. So between the camp and just my home, we were able to leverage that for 8 or 9 locations. And that's how you have to start reverse engineering your subject matter and your locations when you're developing your screenplay for the feature film. Now, while we're still talking about locations, what you're gonna have to balance out is you're trying to find the most interesting, unique, aesthetically pleasing locations that have a high production value. But you also have to watch out for really, really complicated locations because those can often be expensive locations. Maybe you could even land something for free or for a low cost, but if it's complicated, it might have other costs that come with it that's going to eat into your budget. If you're going to try to shoot on a bridge, which I've done before, and is complicated and can be expensive if you don't thread a really fine needle, then you're going to have to come up with traffic support and safety support and work with law enforcement and their permits and things like that get into it. You can't write your story based on a professional sports stadium or a circus or an amusement park or something like that, where you're going to have to fill it with a lot of people, or there are a lot of things to monitor and to try to control that. And unless you have a special end and you're basing your story around a time when one of those locations isn't filled with people, then you might be able to do that. But just watch out if you go too big or too complicated, then that could end up eating into your budget with security and people to direct crowds and for parking and those sorts of costs can really easily eat into your budget. But you're going to look for unique locations that aren't going to require a lot of people. And like I said, you might be thinking with a bowling alley example for Smells Like Community Spirit, when you have to fill that with a lot of people and aren't there props to get into and lots of bowling shoes or whatever that might cost you. But one of the other things that you can think about when you're riding is, with Smells Like Community Spirit, it was based in a really small town. And so you get away with, there aren't a lot of patrons at the bowling alley. So you only have to sprinkle in a few people, and it feels natural for a small town bowling alley to only have a few people and to not be, packed out 24/7. So that's a way that you can work around it, but you have to think, how can the story work for the limitations and the limitations work for the story? As you're thinking about those locations and you're writing the story, you're also going to want to think about not writing in too many locations. I would suggest trying to keep it to 3 to 5 physical addresses that you're at. Now, just like with Smells Like Community Spirit, I was able to get 8 or 9 sort of story locations on camera out of 2 physical addresses. And I think that's fine. You can do more than one location that way, or go more than 3 to 5 locations if they're limited to only 3 to 5 addresses. But the reason why you're wanting to do that is it gets a little bit into the production side of thing, and again, into that budget and time and money, is with each location, there's time that you're spending to get acclimated to the location, to get all of your equipment built and staged, and your lighting and your sound, and even the time it takes for folks to get used to where to park and where to enter and where you're going to set up hair and makeup and where you're going to set up craft services and where Video Village is going to be and those sorts of things. So if you can limit the number of physical addresses that you're at, you're saving yourself time, you're saving yourself money, and that can go into what goes on screen and the performances and spending extra time tweaking the lighting and extra time setting up the camera and extra time directing the actors in their performance. So if you save time with those constraints on your location, it's going to show up better on camera and it's going to save you money. When you're thinking about locations and writing the screenplay for your feature film, you're also going to want to think about how many scenes you write at night and how much driving is done. I know it could be really cool. There are lots of fun things that you can explore at night or in driving scenes, but those are expensive, complicated scenes that are going to eat into your time and into your money. When you're shooting at night, you're going to have more light. You're going to have more artificial light that you're bringing in. That's going to cost you money for the equipment, and it's going to cost you time to set it up. I've shot scenes at night before. I try to limit those, and it's always complicated and it always takes more time. Same thing for driving scenes. In order to do them well, they take time, they take money, they're complicated. Especially if you want to do them safely. And that's one thing I want to encourage you while we're talking about that is, please don't let the passion for your project get in front of the safety of others, the safety of your crew. Early on in my filmmaking career, there were some times that I took some risks that I'm not proud of and that were mistakes. And I learned from that, especially after there were, multiple stories that you've probably heard about people getting seriously injured or even dying on the set when producers and directors were taking chances that they shouldn't. So I want to say, if you're going to do a driving scene, one, make sure you're doing it right. Do not ask the actors to actually drive a vehicle while delivering lines. Make sure that you have a trailer to have that vehicle on that you're pulling them from behind in, or if you want to see them driving and you don't have access to that, you don't have it in your budget, then picking up a couple of shots of them driving without delivering dialogue might be okay. But definitely don't ask them to be delivering dialogue while driving. There's just too much going on and it's not safe. So you want to avoid those scenes at night and those driving scenes, because those can cost you a lot of time and money to do properly. If you absolutely can't get through your screenplay without something at night or something driving, put that limitation on yourself. Okay, I'm going to do a couple, but limit it to no more than 2 scenes at night, no more than 2 scenes driving. And again, don't have the actors delivering dialogue while they're driving. They can drive, they can park, they can deliver their couple of lines, and then everybody wins. There's some really great examples of single location movies that you can watch to get a little bit of inspiration and to see how they were executed with just a single location, and they told a really great story. You could take a look at Rope, the classic movie by Hitchcock, 12 Angry Men, Clerks, Breakfast Club, Room. All of those are great examples to see how can you tell a really compelling story with a single location.